All right. I got elected to Congress in 2012, and I took some votes, and they got mad at me because I was voting my conscience, and my mom got worried for me. My mom asked me, she said, Thomas, are you making any friends up there in Congress? I said, Mom, if you met these jokers, you wouldn't be their friend. But I did meet one guy. The year I got elected, he got elected as well to Congress in 2012. I was looking for somebody to talk to who had a brain in Washington, D.C. And I've only found a few of them, but they didn't have common sense. But then I found Ron DeSantis. We were elected the same year. And neither of us wanted to put on tuxedos and go to the champagne parties. So we would go out and have a hamburger and talk about what was in the bills that we had to vote on. Imagine that. Read the bills. Should we be reading the bills in Washington, D.C.? I think so. You know, there's one bill I'm sure you all are not a fan of, the Green New Deal. Does anybody know? So we read that bill, right? We read that bill, and I put it down. It was only 14 pages long. And when I got done reading it, I realized why the Green New Deal is only 14 pages long. There's only 64 crayons in the big box. So listen, on March 27th, 2020, I got a call at home. I was waiting to go to Congress and vote on something to deal with the virus. But instead of attacking the virus, in Washington, D.C., they decided to attack our economy. And they said, we're going to pass $2 trillion in Washington, D.C., and we're going to do it on unanimous consent. There'll be no record of it. Nobody has to go on the record. But we just need all 435 of you to stay quiet, nobody say anything, and we'll spend $2 trillion with Nancy Pelosi, the only one that needs to be there to pass it. They didn't even want us to come to work to spend that money. I said, listen, if you're going to spend $2 trillion, you need to show up to work, and you need to go on the record. I said, if farmers are working and nurses are working and you're working at the grocery store and the truckers are driving trucks, then by golly, get your butts to work. So I got in a car at midnight when I found out they were going to try and spend $2 trillion with nobody there. I drove overnight from Kentucky to Washington, D.C., and I said, I object. You're clapping, but nobody there was. CNN said I was the most hated man in Washington, D.C. That is the first time they ever reported the news correctly. I was the most hated person. It took them 2 days to get Congress to come to Washington, D.C. There were 737s with only one person on the plane because they were trying to shut down the whole country. I drug them all back to Washington, D.C. Nancy Pelosi called me a dangerous nuisance. I think we need more dangerous nuisances to Nancy Pelosi's agenda. I'll tell you who a dangerous nuisance to her agenda would be, Ron DeSantis. But in all seriousness, let's talk about what was in the CARES Act. It spent $2 trillion. They printed all that money. They didn't even borrow it. They printed it. It had money, millions of dollars, to fund mail-in elections in all 50 states. It had paying people not to work. I said, if you spend $2 trillion and you pay people not to work, not only are you going to get inflation, you're going to get shortages, and you're also going to fund all of these blue states to shut down their governments for a year. This will be the worst thing that ever happened to our economy. And I caught all kinds of hell for telling them the truth. They hated me for telling them the truth. Well, they all showed up, and I'm sitting there on the floor of the House watching the microphone, getting ready for my moment to object, and my phone rings. And I looked at it, and the caller ID was 0000000. I'm like, who could have a phone number with all zeros? Who has enough power to get that phone number? Oh no, that's Trump calling me. So I let it go to voicemail. I mean, I was trying to save the country from the biggest mistake we've ever had. He did not leave a message. So he called again. I let it go to voicemail again. He called me 3 times in the course of less than 5 minutes. He did not leave a message, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, that's the president. You should call him back. Well, they yielded some time for debate, so I had time to walk outside, and I called him back, and he came on the phone, and he said, by the way, I'm trying to save him from this, and he thinks I'm the enemy. He said, I'm coming at you like you've never seen. Never in your life before have you seen the way in which I will come at you. I'm more popular than you in Kentucky, and you know it. I had polling, and he was right. He was more popular than me. Not anymore. I'm coming at you like you've never seen. I'm backing your primary opponent, and you're gonna lose. And then I tried to explain the Constitution requires a quorum to pass anything, that tried to explain all the mistakes that were going to be in this bill, that it would fund a mail-in election, all of these things that would be bad. And he just screamed at me, and then he hung up on me. So as I was walking back to my seat in Congress to make the objection, somebody tapped me on the shoulder again. They said, look at your Twitter. I said, oh no. He said I should be thrown out of the GOP in the first tweet. And in the second tweet, he called me a third-rate grandstander. Now, the press asked me what I had to say for myself. My own president just called me a third-rate grandstander. And I looked at him, I said, I'm at least second-rate. You just kind of got to laugh some of this stuff off, or you would end up crying. But I'm telling you this story because there's a big contrast here. The contrast couldn't be any greater. I was trying to help our country, okay? And I was being screamed at by our president. The bill that funded the mail-in elections, the bill that caused all the inflation, the bill that caused the shortages, okay? All I wanted was a recorded vote. I wanted to stop it, but I knew I couldn't stop it. I wanted to put everybody on record so then you could sort it out later after they crashed our economy. So when I had almost not a friend in the world, okay? Remember, there were $1,200 checks in this bill. The mice never understand why the cheese is free, okay? The $1,200 checks were the cheese in the trap to make this bill really popular. If you did the math, $1,200 to every family wasn't even 8% of the spending of this bill. It was going to Wall Street. It was going to go to the bankers eventually. So without a friend in the world, a little bit later, I get a phone call from another phone number, but I recognize this one. It was a guy I served with in Congress a few years ago who had become a governor. And he was calling me because I was the most hated person in Washington, D.C. And he was one of the most hated people in the country because he told me, I'm going to keep my schools open. We are not depriving children of an education. He said, I'm opening up our economy. We are not going to put these mom and pop stores out of business. Our beaches are going to be open. You will be free in Florida. And he said, it's very unpopular right now. People are saying that people will die in Florida, that the president was mad at him for opening up the economy. The media hated him for opening up the economy. The other governors who were keeping their states closed hated him. He said, but I know it's unpopular right now, but I'm doing it, and here's why. Because in 2 years, I think people will understand this was the right thing. And he said, there were people telling him he would never win another election for dog catcher for what he was doing. But he told me to keep doing what I was doing in Washington, D.C. He said, it's the right thing. You're doing it for the people. I'm going to do this for the people. And maybe in 2 years, the people will see that we were fighting for them. So at that moment, I said, this guy is thinking 2 years ahead. My colleagues in Congress, most of them can't think past lunch. Are they going to have the Senate bean soup? Here's a guy who was thinking already past his next election. He did not care if he got reelected. He was going to do the right thing no matter what. And that is why I am backing this man 100% for president. Ron DeSantis for president. All right. It gives me great joy to introduce one of the other people in Congress who has a brain and common sense. They're very rare. So to So to get one of them here in Iowa is a great thing. He's from Texas. He's a congressman from Texas. We serve on the Judiciary Committee together, where we stand up for your Second Amendment, which, by the way, Ron DeSantis is the strongest pro-Second Amendment candidate in this race. Unlike another person who said, take the guns first and we'll do the due process later. That is not due process. But I'm introducing Chip Roy. He is from Texas. He's close to the border. He knows the policy forwards and backwards, and he is the leader in closing this border and getting our country back. I give you Chip Roy from Texas.
Well, good evening, Iowa. Are you guys ready? Yes! Let me ask you a question. Do you think that New Hampshire or any other state needs to correct Iowa? No! Well, that rules out one candidate. Do you think that the people of Iowa are owed by any candidate, no matter what position they've ever held, owed the respect of coming here and debating and meeting with the people of Iowa? I think that rules out another candidate. Look, I came up here on Wednesday and drove 8 hours from St. Louis to Des Moines through the blizzard, and I did that for a reason. I did that for my 14-year-old son, Charlie, and my 12-year-old daughter, Virginia. They were with me in December campaigning the week before Christmas. They wanted to come up. They couldn't because they had their 4-H fair yesterday. They had to show their goats. Well, the good news is my son, Charlie, won. My daughter wanted to come up, and then I told her it was going to be minus 22 degrees, and she said, "Is that real?" Austin, Texas. She doesn't know what that means. But this matters. I want for my 14-year-old son, Charlie, and my 12-year-old daughter, Virginia, I want a man in the Oval Office that they can look up to. I want a man in the Oval Office that they can respect and that they can emulate. Somebody who wore the uniform of the United States Navy. And who devoted his life to public service. Serving in the Navy, serving as a federal prosecutor, serving in the United States Congress, and have the great wisdom to leave Congress to go be an executive as the governor of the state of Florida. And what matters to me is that we have a governor that they can look up to, or I'm sorry, a president that they can look up to, but also someone who will deliver. And this matters. It matters because everything you believe in, everything you hold dear is at stake right now. The next president of the United States is going to be president in July of 2026, which is what? Our 250th birthday as a nation. So I think you should ask yourself a question. Who do you want to be in the Oval Office when we are celebrating our 250th birthday? And it matters because we also want to be able to answer the question, are we free? And I want somebody in the Oval Office who's going to stand up and fight for our freedom. Like Governor DeSantis did when, with all due respect, the former president shut down the greatest economy in the history of the world and racked up $8 trillion of debt, shoving our kids to corners, closing down schools, empowering vaccine mandates, having nurses lose their jobs, having men and women in uniform lose their jobs. Governor DeSantis said no, opened up Florida, and was a beacon of hope for a nation that knew we needed to be open as a country. In 2026, when we're celebrating our 250th birthday, I want us to say that the time for excuses is over. that, as Ronald Reagan said in 1964 when he gave his famous time for choosing speech, that we have in fact chose freedom, that we have chose prosperity, that we have chosen to be proud of our country, proud of the Constitution, and that we have somebody in the Oval Office who will defend that Constitution, not only when he wore the uniform in the United States Navy, not only as governor, but in the Oval Office, as I know Governor Ron DeSantis will do. Now look, you all have a choice, but this is what's important. The people of Iowa should be respected for making that choice. You all hold in your hand the power to shape history. You all hold in your hand the power to tell the media, the Beltway elite, all of the people in this country that have said this election is already decided by polls, that it is you who will decide, that it is you who will set the stage for the country, that it is you who will give our country the ability and the opportunity to have Governor Ron DeSantis on the ballot in all 50 states, go to the convention, nominate him, beat Democrats in the fall, and save this country with somebody who can serve for 8 years. I am tired of excuses. I'm tired of excuses from Republicans in Congress. I'm tired of excuses from Republicans for now decades who are more interested in saddling up with the corporate crony world, the people that are enriched the insurance companies instead of making sure you can go to the doctor of your choice, the people that side with Disney instead of Governor Ron DeSantis, who fought for your kids and fought Disney when they said that you couldn't do it. And it matters that you have the courage to take on the corporate establishment. Ron DeSantis took on the sugar industry and protected the Everglades for the people of Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis took on Disney to protect your kids when a certain governor from South Carolina said, "Oh, no, Disney, come on up to South Carolina." We don't need that in the White House. We need somebody who will stand up and win like Governor Ron DeSantis did. We need somebody who will stand up and take on the insurance industry, take on the corporate lobby in Washington, and importantly, do what he said he would do and secure the border of the United States once and for all. I can tell you, we all feel it, but as a Texan whose district in the southwest corner is 100 miles from the border, we feel it every single day. 6 kids died from fentanyl poisoning in my school district where my family lives last year alone. That has to end. And look, and let me be very clear, okay? I was a Ted Cruz guy. I was his chief of staff in 2016, and you people chose Ted, and that was awesome. But we all got behind President Trump because I mean this. He was the man for the moment in 2016 to take on the swamp and to shine a light on it. He was. I supported him in 2020. But the man for the moment in 2024 is Governor Ron DeSantis, and let's be very clear about that. President Trump had the opportunity to have the United States House of Representatives run by Republicans and the Senate run by Republicans. He had the opportunity to do everything as possible to permanently secure the border of the United States. He did not sign an executive order with respect to birthright citizenship. He did not get legislation passed to put policies in place to permanently secure the border, instead choosing to side with Paul Ryan on an amnesty first instead of a border security first bill. And it failed in 2018, and now we're suffering the consequences for it. Meanwhile, what did Governor Ron DeSantis do? He sent the National Guard to Texas. He passed legislation through the Florida legislature for IDs and getting criminals off the streets. And he sent a plane load of illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard, and he totally changed the entire conversation. That is what leadership looks like. And he helped save the Republican Congress 18 months ago by showing that leadership. And you know what? All of the naysayers said, if you do that, you'll lose. You'll lose in November, because he did it 2 months before the election. You know what he did? He won 62% of Hispanic voters who want their country to be secure just as well. And all of the people who said you can't do that, and you can't take on Disney, and you can't take on the teachers' unions, he did, and he won. And you can't fire the Soros prosecutors, he did, and he won. They said, you can't do that. He said, I'm going to do it anyway because I'm fighting for the people who elected me. And he won Florida by 1.5 million votes. If you want to win in November, you need somebody who can deliver like Governor DeSantis did. You need somebody who will have the coattails to win the House and the Senate. You need somebody who won't give excuses, who won't create the system of a shutdown government with mail-in ballots and then complain about the mail-in ballots that ended up defeating them. You need somebody who, instead of counting votes in Fulton County or Maricopa County or Miami-Dade, you need somebody who's already won Miami-Dade and will win by so many it doesn't matter how many votes you have to count. Before I introduce the next speaker, I'm going to say something very personal. Like, I'm a cancer survivor. I was lucky to get through stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. We need somebody who's going to take on the healthcare establishment and win so we can get our healthcare back. That's why I got into office. That's why I got into public service. Now, I've got a woman in my district who's in stage 4 cancer. She's on Obamacare, and she can't go to MD Anderson, which is where I went, the best cancer hospital in the world. She can't go there under Obamacare. So all you cameras out there, all of the media out there that's been pumping up Obamacare for a decade, you own this, Obamacare owns this, the people who supported it owns it, and we need a president who will overturn it and put health care policy in place that will protect our health care. Please, for all of us who do not live in Iowa, do the one thing we can't do. We don't get a vote tomorrow. We don't get to caucus tomorrow. You do. You have the power to shape the future of this country for generations to come by giving us a generational candidate, the best candidate I've seen in my lifetime who's delivered for the people he represents. Let's give this country the ability to have Ron DeSantis as the President of the United States. It has been my honor to go around and campaign with Thomas Massie. It has been my honor to go around and campaign with your great governor, Kim Reynolds.
The kind of energy, enthusiasm, and momentum that we are seeing all across the state. It is exciting, it is incredible, and it's why I know we are going to have a good night tomorrow night. Hey, I want to say, first of all, thank you all. Thank you for showing up on a cold, pretty cold, Sunday night in Iowa. I just want to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for caring about this country, about making sure that we elect the right person that can step in on day one and turn this country around. It matters. It is the kind of energy and enthusiasm. It is the commitment. So we need you to do it one more night. We need you to be safe, but we need you to layer up and get out there and be sure and go caucus. This country is in trouble, and you know it. You've heard it from the speakers that have gone before me. All you have to do is look at the border, look at the economy, look at the weakness on the world stage, the insanity that we've seen from this Biden administration, the unconscionable dereliction of duty to not protect our southern border and the sovereignty of this country, and most importantly, the American citizens. It is unconscionable, unforgivable. We need somebody tomorrow night that can not only win, that can win this next election, but has the skill and the resolve to step in on day one with a plan, record, and a commitment to the people of this country to reverse the insanity and madness that we have seen under the Biden administration. That's focused on the future and not the past, who follows through with his promises, who puts America and you first, not themselves. There is one true conservative in this race, and he has a record to back it up. So I got to know Ron as a governor, very impressed. I really got to know him during COVID, because I'm telling you, there wasn't very many of us on that island. There wasn't very many of us that said we're going to trust the people that we serve, we're going to give them the information, we're going to keep the economy open, we're going to keep our kids in school, and we're going to let people decide what's best for them. Not very many of us out there. So not only that, but he is a get-it-done kind of guy, and I have been so impressed with his record of accomplishments. And you've heard the previous speakers talk about it, but you know, from COVID to backing parents and law enforcement to, I think, a 50-year low with crime. This guy, I don't know if anybody mentioned it, but you know, we're cutting taxes too, so I want you to hang in there with me. We're gonna give Ron a run for his money. He's cut taxes every year. He's done that because he's kept spending in check. And get this, he has reduced Florida's debt by nearly 25%. Who thinks we need that in Washington, D.C.? Yes. 100% of the promises made, promises kept. And it's on issue after issue after issue. I could go on and on. When this guy tells you he's going to do something, he's got a plan ready to follow through. And I say this without hesitation. He is the most effective leader that I have seen in a long, long time. This conservative, problem-solving, bold, disciplined, principled leader is standing right in front of you. So come on, Iowa. Come on, America. Let's elect the guy that can get this done and get this country back on track. I have never been more honored to support and introduce somebody that I believe in with all of my heart and soul. And just go check his record. I can't say it enough. Go check his record. And I'm going to say one more thing before I bring them up. I don't know which way they're coming from here. But not only do you get an incredible leader in Ron, but you get a dynamic duo. Casey DeSantis is a force of her own. She has led on 3 to 4 major initiatives in Florida. She is out there making a difference every single day. And these two, I've got to see them behind the scene too. A husband, a wife, a mom, and a dad. It is incredible to see them with their kids. Faith, family is the foundation, and a love for this country that they are willing to sacrifice to get in there and save it. So please, Iowa, go vote, show up, keep the energy, keep the momentum going, and we are going to have one heck of a night tomorrow night. Please welcome Ron DeSantis and the entire family.
Great job. Wave, honey, wave. Are you ready to brave the cold in the caucus? Can you handle the ice on the roads? Can you handle the wind chill? Well, I can tell you this, if you're willing to go brave the elements for a few hours tomorrow night, and you go out and caucus for me, I'll be fighting for you for the next 8 years as the next president of the United States. Now, we could do a sitcom on this. This is taking a Florida family and dumping them in the middle of a blizzard in January. So a month and a half ago, they had never even seen snow before. Now they've had snowball fights, they've done snowmen, and
they've been really dodging some stuff. At first, they said they liked the snow better than Florida. Now, after having seen all this, they say it's a little too cold for them. So, well, now you know why so many people from the Midwest end up in Fort Myers and Naples in January. There's no. Do you guys want to say anything? Mason, what was the score of the Georgia-Florida State game?
63-3.
63-3. That was wounding for him. He's a big Florida State fan. Mamie, do you want to say anything? Madison? No? Okay. Wave, say thank you. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the great governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds, for her support. She's done a great job here. I know that because I have people that come from Iowa to visit Florida, and they tell me, for years they've been telling me what a good job she's done. I can tell you the people that come to Florida from Illinois and California and New York do not think their governors are doing good jobs, but we all know that Kim has done very well. And so that was why, I'm watching Donald Trump earlier today, and he's attacking Governor Reynolds. But here's the thing, politics and beanbag, people they're going to do whatever. But he's not attacking her because she's done anything wrong. He's not attacking her because she's been, a liberal governor. No, to the contrary. She's delivered on all these big issues that Republicans and conservatives have been asking for years and years. No, the reason why he throws shade is simply because she didn't endorse him in the primary, and that's the only reason he cares about. And so for Donald Trump, he's running a campaign about putting himself and his issues first. That's what he cares about. You can be the most worthless Republican in America, but if you kiss the ring, he'll say you're wonderful. You can be the strongest, most dynamic, successful Republican and conservative in America, but if you don't kiss that ring, then he'll try to trash you. You know what? You deserve a nominee that's going to put you first, not himself first. So he's running on his issues. Haley's just running for the donors' issues. I'm running for your issues and your family's issues. I'm running to turn this country around. And we don't have a lot of time here because I think 2024 is a time for choosing for this country. What we will do or not do is not just going to impact the next 4 years, or even in my case, the next 8 years. It will impact the next 25, 30, 40 years, whether we got it right or whether we failed the test. And we've got to get it right. I can say I'm the only candidate running who's delivered on 100% of my promises. When I promised people I would do something, I've done it. And you can go all down the line, everything we've done that Republicans and conservatives have been asking for years and years. Very few of Republicans get elected and never do anything about any of this stuff. I did. We delivered, and the results speak for themselves. I look at somebody like Donald Trump. I went to those rallies in 2016. They were fun. He was promising to put America first, to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it, promising to drain the swamp, promising to hold Hillary accountable, promising to eliminate the debt, and on it goes. And those promises were not fulfilled. He did not deliver on those. He did not. If he had built the wall, Biden would not have been able to let in 8 million illegals. That's the whole purpose of a wall. And not only did he not drain the swamp, he filled the swamp. He appointed Christopher Wray to the FBI. He elevated Anthony Fauci to the de facto president of the United States during COVID. That was him that did it. And now he wants to do even more. He wants to build a $1 billion new headquarters for the FBI right smack dab in the middle of Washington, D.C. That's not draining the swamp. That's filling the swamp. You know, he promised that he would sign an executive order to eliminate birthright citizenship, so you don't have this thing where people come illegally, have a kid, and somehow that's a citizen and it creates an anchor. And he had 4 years to sign it. He promised this in 2016, 4 years. All you have to do is just sit down there and write. And he didn't do it for 4 years. So that's bad, because my view is if you say you're going to do it, do it. But what's even worse is he's running now in 24, promising to sign an executive order on birthright citizenship. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. The other thing I can say is I'm the only candidate running for president who has actually fought and beaten the Democratic Party and the left on issue after issue after issue. I mean, you know, when Trump was president, Pelosi and Schumer beat him on every single budget bill. That's why they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. They beat him on the border by denying the border wall. Wasn't able to get it done through Congress. Obviously beat him on the CARES Act, which Tom Massey talked about, that started off everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years. So those are just the facts. So when you look at me, we beat the teachers union by enacting universal school choice. And not only that, they sued me during COVID because they wanted to have the schools closed. And we beat them on COVID. We beat them on school opening. And not only that, we now have in Florida enacted paycheck protection for teachers. So no automatic deduction of school union dues. You know what? A lot of teachers are choosing not to pay those dues and join. And you have some of these major unions, like in Miami-Dade, a radical teacher union. They're on the brink of decertification. So this is what you call winning on these issues. Number two, we beat Fauci during COVID. We beat Donald Trump and Fauci plunged this country into lockdown. We in Florida dragged the country out of lockdown. And that means we had businesses, economy boom, we had schools open. We beat the mandates by saying nobody can force you to muzzle yourself with a piece of cloth. No one can force you to take a shot that you don't want with the mNRA shots. And we saved tens of thousands of jobs by doing that. We also beat George Soros on crime by removing 2 of these radical left prosecutors who refused to enforce the law. We beat the Democrats on election integrity, and we have voter ID, no ballot harvesting, and we actually count the votes the night of the election and report the results. Imagine that. We beat Disney on protecting children from harmful ideology. And oh, by the way, the other candidates on the Republican side, they took Disney's side over our side in Florida when it came to protecting kids. We also beat the left when we banned China from purchasing land in the state of Florida. No land near military base, no farm, none of that. So obviously, you gotta win the election, and that's important. And we won in Florida by more than anyone's ever won before as Republican, whereas these other candidates have underperformed in their elections. And so we have the best track record there. But getting elected, yes, that means that you can prevent them from being in there. And it does mean you can stop some damage. But to just sit there like a potted plant and not get anything done is not going to cut it. To just manage the decline of this country a little bit better than the Democrats is not going to cut it. We need a president who's going to go in there and going to actually get all this stuff done and deliver big victories for the American people. And I'm the guy that can do that. The others are not going to do that. So we're now in the stretch run here. We got, less than 24 hours away. If you've committed to caucus for us, thank you. Now your job between now and caucus night is to bring some more people out to caucus for us. Look, you're never going to have an opportunity to cast a vote that's going to have a bigger impact, pound for pound, than this one. You know, the weather's really bad. There were 186,000 people that participated in 2016. There may be significantly less this time. So if you're going to caucus for us and you bring a couple family members, a coworker, a neighbor, that's going to have a huge impact as that's replicated all across Iowa. Very important. So we need you to do that. And if you haven't committed to us coming in tonight, we ask that you do on the way out. Let us know you're on board. We're going to have a huge group of people that are very passionate about this country's future and about saying, you know what, we're not going to let the media pick our candidate. We're not going to let the polling that they generate. We don't care about any of that. We care about what's right and going out and having our voice heard. So you guys have an opportunity to do that. So we're in this because I look at what's going to happen in the future. You saw our kids. We have a very young family. What's going to happen 5 years, 20, 25 years from now? It's going to have a huge impact on their lives, and I know you have kids and grandkids that you care about. I'm also motivated by doing justice to the sacrifices of so many generations of Americans that have come before us. You know, we're fortunate to have grown up, lived in the greatest country in the history of the world, and we have tough times for this country recently. You know, really over many years, we've had some tough times. But I've traveled to all 99 counties here. I've seen the decency. I've seen the patriotism. I've seen people that are God-fearing, good people, hardworking people, and that's really what America's all about. And that didn't just happen overnight. That was a lot of people through the years that had to sacrifice so that future generations would have better opportunities. And, you know, our founding fathers, they understood freedom's fragile. President Reagan said freedom's one generation away from extinction. It's not something that's passed along in the bloodstream. You got to fight for it. You got to cultivate it. I used to take a trip to Washington, D.C. When you fly in, I used to go up there. You take a trip into Reagan Airport, and there was one route that took you in a nice route right by our National Mall. So if you looked out the left side of the plane, you saw panoramic views of the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Reflecting Pool, the other monuments, the Capitol Building, and you felt a sense of pride as an American because those symbolize the principles and ideals that have made us unique as a people. But after doing that trip a few times, I realized that's not the best monuments to this country on that National Mall. All you had to do was look out the window on the other side of the plane. And if you did that, you looked over the Potomac River, you saw a series of small, nondescript monuments orderly arranged over the rolling hills of a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And I believed this then, and I believe it now. You can have the best Constitution in the world. You can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. These things don't run on autopilot. They require people to stand up and fight for freedom when it's at risk, and sometimes put on a uniform, risk your life, and even give the last full measure of devotion for service to this country. Now, this political season we find ourselves in, we're not asked to make sacrifices at that level. But what we are called upon to do is to make sure that we're not squandering the sacrifices that people made. What we are called upon to do is to preserve what George Washington called the sacred fire of liberty. This is the fire that burned in Independence Hall in 1776 when 56 men pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to establish a new nation conceived in liberty. This is a fire that burned at a cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, when our nation's first Republican president pledged our nation to a new birth of freedom. This is the fire that burned on the beaches of Normandy when a merry band of brothers stormed the shores, defeated the Nazis, and preserved liberty throughout the world. This is a fire that burned at the foot of the Berlin Wall in 1987 when a resolute Republican president stood in front of that wall and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," eventually leading to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. This is a fire that burns here in the state of Iowa and that will burn on Monday night when people go out to caucus and to exercise their judgment. So our responsibility is to carry the torch and preserve the sacred fire of liberty. You will have an ability to do that Monday night. I will take that torch into the remaining states and continue with this nomination battle. ultimately, this is a responsibility we should not shy away from. This is a responsibility that we should welcome, because if not now, when? And if not us, who? I will be somebody, with your support on Monday night, I will be a candidate that will sweep us to victory, just like we did in Florida in record fashion. But more importantly than that, as a leader, I'll always be somebody that you can be proud of. And most importantly, as the next president of the United States, I will get the job done. I will turn this country around, and I will not let you down. Thank you all. God bless you. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. All righty. Thank you. Wonderful. All right, does anyone have a question? Yes.
So I'm a volunteer for Washington State. I flew in the middle of the country to help get you elected. My governor, Jay Inslee, lets my state burn with the BLM riots and Antifa riots. And I'm just wondering, as an executive, what could you have done different other than tweeting from your basement, law and order, law and order, law and order?
Right, so the question's about the BLM riots, and you saw that happening all across the country in the summer of 2020. Remember, they were telling you before the BLM riots that you were not allowed to leave your house. I remember in Florida, people are at the beach, they're playing golf, and they were getting absolutely ripped by the media, by these public health bureaucrats and everything. And it was almost like they just expected you to just isolate indefinitely. And that was what they were saying in April and May of 2020. Then all of a sudden, you know, you have these George Floyd riots and the protests. And so you have massive numbers of people going out. And so these public health bureaucrats, the Fauci-type people, were asked, well, wait a minute, isn't this bad for COVID if there's all these groups of people? And what they said was, well, we think that protesting against racial discrimination is important for public health. We don't think that those gatherings are bad for COVID, but you're not allowed to protest lockdowns. You're not allowed to protest anything else. And that's when you realize that this whole thing, these people were total frauds. I mean, it was such a joke when they were doing that. So that kind of led into it. And I honestly believe, had Trump and Fauci not plunged the country into lockdown, I don't think we would have had riots at that scale. I think there was a lot of stuff pent up, and I think that it kind of went. Now, once it happened in Minneapolis, I called out the National Guard in Florida. We deployed state law enforcement. We said, you're not burning down anything in Florida. And sure enough, nothing happened. And that's what you have to do. You, as the president, you absolutely have the right to prevent this type of rioting. You know, Bush 41 sent people to LA in '92. So Trump could have done it. He refused to do it. Why? I think he was worried that the press would attack him. And he was concerned about, you know, re-election and everything. It's the same reason he didn't fire Fauci, because he was scared of the blowback. That's not leadership. Leadership is taking action to protect the liberty of the people, to protect public order. And I can tell you this, you have those BLM riots, when I'm president, we will go in and we will put an end to them. We're not going to let the country burn down.
How can you balance the budget?
Well, you know, you got two people that are responsible for appropriating the money here. You know, Tom Massey has, he's got a lapel pin he made. That's the national debt clock like they have in New York City. And he made that, and he wears it on the House floor, I think to kind of shame his colleagues into stopping them from squandering our kids' and grandkids' future. He gave me one of those, and I was thinking about wearing it, but I was like, you know what? Can you do one for me with the state of Florida's debt clock? Because if you did that, it wouldn't be counting up, it would be counting down, because we paid off 25% of our state's debt. And part of the reason we were able to do that is because I vetoed billions of dollars of spending as governor. And you've got to be willing to use your veto pen, especially if they're putting, you know, really grotesque products on your desk that are spending way too much money. And the thing is they're spending your money on things like promoting transgenderism in Bangladesh. I mean, when I saw that one, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So they're bankrupting the country. As president, obviously I'll have budgets that are leaner. I'll be willing to veto but I think you need more structural reform. I mean, I think you need a balanced budget requirement in the Constitution. I think you need term limits for members of Congress so that they can cycle in and out. I think you need a line item veto for the president. You know, I'm able to veto as governor these individual things. Imagine if they put that on the desk, how much pork you could veto out of the budget. So I think, and states are working on proposing these and getting these going to put them in as reforms. And I think I'll lend the bully pulpit to that, and we'll start to speak. I don't think Congress would enact that, but you can do it through the states as well. So that's what we're going to do, because I think even if we decided, all of us here, yeah, we can balance the budget next year, right? 5, 10, 15 years, that the incentives are to continue doing this. This didn't just happen for no reason. This is the incentives in Washington. So you need some of these reforms to be able to change the incentives, and I think that's really important. You guys want to weigh in?
Just, can you tell them about New York versus Florida?
Oh, yeah. Well, this just shows you that this government is out of control. So Florida, we have millions of more people than New York does now. And yet our budget is half the size of New York's budget. The number of state bureaucrats per capita in Florida is the lowest in the United States of America. The cost per employee is the lowest per capita in the United States of America. And so that's just what, but yet when people move from New York to Florida, they say, oh my gosh, you have better roads, better infrastructure, better services, better education. So it just shows we're doing this at half the footprint in terms of the size of government and the cost of government. So much of what the federal government is doing with its bureaucracy is not essential. We could reduce it in half and not miss a beat with the things that we actually need to do for this country. So we are going to go in, we're going to rein in this administrative state, rein in this bureaucracy, both in terms of its size and the scope, and restore the government to its rightful owners, which is we, the American people. And where are you from? What are you doing here? You what? Okay, well, first of all, you're learning to spew propaganda, okay? So you should stop that. All right, do we have any Iowans who have a question? Yes, Iowan? Okay. Great question. Well, you know, what we've done in Florida is, one, we back the men and women of law enforcement, and we support what they have to do. You know, what they were doing during the whole BLM stuff was attacking the police, and it made it so that you're going to risk your life, and then all of a sudden the politicians are going to impugn you. That's why we've had so many of these police officers move to Florida, from Seattle, from Philly, from Chicago, from New York, because they're treated horribly. So we treat them well. We understand it's important to do. And I think that that's something that as president, because if you think about it, part of this started with Obama. He would attack the police, and that created a lot of real negative static for them ever since. We're going to support them. It's very important for our communities. It's important to do. The other thing is these prosecutors. They get elected, and then they don't enforce the law. San Francisco had one, LA, Chicago, Philly, all these places. That's really violating the civil rights of their citizens. Like, you don't have the authority to just simply ignore laws you disagree with. And so we're going to ensure that those are enforced, and we're going to ensure that we hold those folks accountable. And we're also not going to support any policies that are releasing dangerous people back onto the street. And the fact of the matter is, when you eliminate cash bail, when you do some of the things that have been done in some of these states, the results have been disastrous. So this is not rocket science. Woke ideology and leftist policies fail. It makes society less safe. Our policies work, and you will be able to raise kids in peace and security. And we need that from coast to coast. Great question. So what are you going to do to strengthen the military? I think there's two things. One, I mean, I'm the only veteran running for president who's been in. And so, and I just remember that so I served in Iraq during, when it wasn't great, but even during that time, people would sign up to the Marines, they'd sign up to the Army knowing they were going to get sent to Iraq. And yet people still did it. Now we have the worst recruiting since the end of the Vietnam War and the end of the draft. And I think it's because the military and civilians who oversee the military have injected a social agenda into the military. You have woke stuff, you've got political stuff, and that is terrible for morale, and it's just detracting from the mission. So day one as commander-in-chief, we rip it all out and throw it in the trash can. We're going to focus the military on pursuing the mission first. And I think you got to get that right, because that having a positive culture, it will cause more people to want to join. You'll be able to retain more people, and you'll just be more effective. I have active duty people, and they've got to be quiet about it because they can't say a lot publicly, but they'll whisper to me saying they've done more DEI training in the last year than actually training for their core competency in the military. And I'm just thinking to myself, how is that acceptable? I can tell you China is not doing it that way, and they wouldn't do it that way. So that's that. And then the other thing is where are our threats, and where's our I think our primary threats to security are one, our southern border is a threat, and we will deal with that. But I think our primary threat from a foreign threat is China. Yes. Their economy is big, almost as big as ours. Their military is big, almost as big as ours. They have global ambitions, and so we need to rebuild the military with an eye on deterring their ambitions in the Indo-Pacific. And so we have a plan to do that, to build up the Navy and to be able to deter that. We have time to do it, but we don't have a lot of time. So we'll go in there, and that'll be one of the things that we do. But I think you got to fix the culture. You can't just pour money into the military if you haven't fixed the culture, and I will fix the culture. And the truth of the matter is, this began under Obama, but it continued under Trump. He didn't have control over his own cabinet secretaries. And so it continued, and now with Biden, it's on steroids. And so this has been a huge, huge problem. We'll reverse that on day one. So the question is about school choice. And so Governor Reynolds has been a champion on that here in Iowa. We have universal school choice in Florida. And first, I mean, we just have to say, this has been a debate in this country for the last 25 plus years about whether choice is good or not. Because, on the left, they will say choice is not good. They will say that it somehow drains resources from public schools, and therefore it hurts education overall. First of all, my view is the money should follow the student, not the system anyways. I mean, that's really how you'd want to do it. But we definitely can look in Florida. I mean, so, you in Florida, a parent can go to obviously your local school in the school district that's public, but you can usually now have choice within your school district, a number of different choices, which we didn't have 25 years ago. You can go to a charter school, which is a public school but not controlled by the school district, or you could take a private scholarship and go to a private school. So that is, any parent now in Florida, regardless of income, has multiple options about what's that. So what does that mean? That means that all these schools have to compete for students because they're not entitled to anybody. Parents have the power. And so if one school, if a charter school is doing well in Hillsborough County, Florida, well, you know what? The school district is going to have to start doing better too to be able to compete to do. So it's created a very positive environment where these schools are competing, where they're innovating. And what's the result? Florida now was #1 in 4th grade reading and 4th grade math. And so this is, and while that has all been going on, we still, because of my initiatives, we still raised teacher salaries, and we still provided increased funding for school districts and charter schools alike. So we've proven it works. And there's no way you can look at Florida's experience over the last 20 years, compare it to California or New York or or Illinois, where they haven't embraced that, and their education's gone down while ours has gone up. So choice works, and once you do it, it's hard to undo because parents like it. And so I think in Florida now, after, with my governorship, I don't think these choice programs will ever be debated again. There's not going to be any Democrat that's going to be able to run saying that he's going to unwind all this, because you would not be able to get elected in the state going forward. So that just shows you it's been successful. So what do you do nationally? You don't mess with the K-12 that people are doing. Let them do that. But what we will do, and it's modeled after what we had in Florida initially, is we had a program for tax credit scholarships through corporate income taxes. So corporations can write off a certain amount of their income tax liability. It goes to a scholarship organization, and then you distribute the scholarships to people that meet the criteria. We can do the same thing federally. So you don't even have to deal with the Department of Education, none of that, all through the Treasury, corporate tax credit. We did $1 billion a year in Florida. That was 100,000 students between administrative costs and scholarship. So if you do $25 billion, you're talking about, significant number of millions of students nationwide, and that's budget dust. So you may even be able to do a lot more than that. So we're going to do that the first year. We're going to put that in. And the thing is, Iowa, maybe it supplements some of the things you guys do, maybe Florida, but probably isn't going to be as big a need. But, we got these kids in Chicago and Philly. They've got no chance because the school unions run these institutions, and they don't care about the kids. We care about these kids, and we're going to help out.
Governor, thank you. I'm a mother and grandmother from Mississippi. I came to see you tonight because you earned my vote with the way you sincerely handled Florida. I've never seen anything like you take on the far left and really honor our conservative policies. I'm a mama bear. Thank you, Casey. Thank you. And being a grandmother that looks what's happening with our children, with our schools, the indoctrination, we are frightened. We are going so far left. We're scared. And could you please assure us, when you do get to Washington, how you're going to protect us?
Great. So the question was about protecting kids. And in Florida, we've had a lot of battles to do that. And it's important. And it's not always politically correct, but it's the right thing to do. So, for example, we did fight Disney to say that, no, it's not appropriate to tell a first grader that they can change their gender. That's wrong. We're not going to have that in the schools. We're going to ensure that we're focusing on the basics, and we're going to let kids be kids. We're going to make sure, I have 2 daughters, they have an ability to do athletics if they want to. We're not going to inject men into women's sports. We're going to make sure that we protect girls, and we've done that. We've also recognized that the whole idea of this gender ideology and gender fluidity, that's not good for this country. It's not good for society to have these elites trying to do that, and that has led to things like where they'll do these gender surgeries on minors. So you'll have people, and these are irreversible, and so you've had people like Chloe Cole, who's talked about, she went through it, and then she got older, and the dysphoria she had resolved itself, and so now she's trying to undo it, but the damage is likely going to be irreversible. So in Florida, we banned having any types of those mutilation procedures for minors. It's wrong. We're not going to do it. But I think it's just, we have to be rooted in truth in this country. Don't tell me that a man can get pregnant and expect me to believe that, because I won't. It's not true, and we can't do it. So, some of what you got to do as president is just speak the truth, make sure that you're willing to go out there and take important stands. And we've obviously done that in Florida, but I think it's much more powerful coming from the White House. So you can count on me to be a voice for protecting the innocence of our children. We need to do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last question.
First of all, thank you. I didn't decide to
Thank you. Yeah, look, I mean, Israel's a strong ally of ours, and part of it is in that part of the world. It's a nasty part of the world. They're the only country that will be allied with us through thick and thin. They're the only country in that part of the world that is democratic and that shares our values. And that's the thing. It's a unique country given that we're a country founded on the Judeo-Christian tradition. So you go back and you look, and has anyone here ever been to Israel? Okay. So if you're able to get, so we went because when I was a U.S. congressman, they do trips. I did launch a trade mission as governor. So I've been many, many times. But the first time you ever go, you can actually go, you can open up a Bible, you could read, and you can be right there, right where you see. And so that piece of, that Holy Land is something that's really meaningful to not just the United States, but all of Western civilization, because that was the foundation of everything that's happened since then. So in that sense, I think it's something that it is a special relationship between us and Israel. And if you ever go and look at some of the holy sites, if Israel was not in control of those sites, you would not be able to exercise religious freedom and probably see. And in fact, Bethlehem is actually in one of the Palestinian Arab-controlled areas. So if you go to Bethlehem, I mean, it's honestly, I was really upset. It's a pigsty. Trash everywhere. It was nasty. They have a church where, I think it's where they think Christ was born. They built this beautiful church. So they have it there and everything, and you go in. Then you walk out, and they built this massive mosque towering over it, because that's just kind of what they do. So all these key sites, if Israel was not a sovereign over them, I don't know that they would even last if not. So I think they play an important role as a democracy in the Middle East, but also caretaker of some of the most important history known to man. Now, the relationship does not need to mean just an open checkbook, because honestly, they're not even asking for that. What they want more than anything is what Biden will not do, is to just have the president stand up there and say, we are not going to sit there and expect Israel to run the risk of a second Holocaust. Hamas wants to kill every Jew in Israel. That is wrong. And we would never, as Americans, accept someone right on our border that wanted to annihilate our entire country. We would never allow that. So they have every right to deal with the threat, because it's not just a threat over small things. It's a threat over the very survival of Israel, and it's a whether they will be able to prevent a second Holocaust. So what we say is, use your judgment, defend your people, and deal with the threat. What you don't do is second guess. What you don't do is go out and virtue signal to the United Nations. What you don't do is behind the scenes try to kneecap them. That is the most important thing than any type of money or anything else that they need. We just need moral clarity here. And the fact of the matter is, it is not an equivalence between a Hamas terrorist and an Israeli soldier who's just defending the people. That's just, we've got to be very clear on that.
I'll just add one thing that I know the governor agrees with. You don't keep writing a blank check to the United Nations and funding dollars going to Hamas.
Oh yeah, don't worry about that. We will, we'll be able to defund the United Nations when I'm president. I mean, this is just ridiculous. The anti-Semitism is absurd. And we're not going to do it. And that's the thing. I mean, I think that the amount of money that we just fritter away as a country, we can't do this anymore. We've got huge problems here. We have our own border that is open. And you can't even control your own country, and you're sending money to the United Nations. So we've got to start putting the American people first. And I think that ultimately, that's ultimately a deciding point for this election. Because I think, honestly, you have me representing kind of the bold colors of putting the American people first, standing for our conservative values. Then I think you have a lot of the other candidates. It's all about, pale pastels. It's about warmed over corporatism, and it's about putting the American people last. And that will not work, and we can't allow that to continue happening in this country. So the good news about that is you don't just got to sit around and throw your shoe at the TV screen and get upset and frustrated for everything that's going on. You actually have the power in your hands to do something about it on Monday night. So can we get this done? Can you go out there and bring it home? Let's do it. God bless you guys. Thank you. Thank you.